Hello everyone, I'm Alan West and welcome to Next Generation TV. And we're up here on Capitol Hill in the Rayburn building in the office of Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana's 1st Congressional District. Thanks so much for having us, Representative.
Great to see you back here, Alan.
Oh, it's great to be here. You know, first of all, kind of give our viewers an orientation to the 1st Congressional District of Louisiana. Exactly what part of the state is that?
Sure. Louisiana's 1st is most of southeast Louisiana. We have a lot of the suburbs of the city of New Orleans, a little bit of the city of New Orleans itself, where the streetcar on St. Charles Avenue starts. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that.
Sure.
A lot of the great restaurants in New Orleans are in my district, but then we have all of the suburbs too. So, you know, I've got an area called Port Fourchon, which is the hub of the oil and gas industry in the Gulf of Mexico. So all the deep water drilling that occurs in the United States, most of that is emanating out of Port Fourchon in my district. So I've got a lot of great area that we're real proud of.
And the previous holder of this congressional district is now the governor. Does that kind of foretell what's going to happen next for Representative Scalise?
No, I'm enjoying this job, but Bobby Jindal was my predecessor, and you know he's doing a great job in Baton Rouge, and we're glad our state actually is doing better than the country, and a lot of the indicators, including unemployment, you know, a lot of good jobs, a lot of businesses coming in. So we're real proud of how it's going back home.
Now, I really want to talk to you about your position as the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, because I believe a lot of Americans don't understand what the RSC really is. That's the conservative members in the House of Representatives. So can you talk a little bit about your responsibility in being the chairman of the RSC?
Sure. I've always said that the RSC is the conservative rudder of the House of Representatives. We're in the majority in the House. But you know, when you look at a lot of policies that have come out of the House in the last couple of years, and especially things that have gotten signed into law, you know, I think a lot of us as conservatives would say that you know there's more left to do, and frankly been a little bit disappointed that we haven't been passing enough conservative policy. And so you know, one of the things the RSC should do, and I know what we've done since I've been chairman this year, is to push our leadership. And when we feel our leadership in the House is moving a little off track, it's to pull them back to the right and make sure that the policies that we're passing out of the House are the most conservative policies that we can pass. You know, whatever the Senate's going to do, that's going to be their business, and you know, and there's a legislative process. But we should be starting with strong conservative policy out of the House. And right now, RSC, and I know you were a member, we've got about 2/3 of the House Republican Conference is a member of RSC. We've got over 170 members of the Republican Study Committee, so I'm proud to be the chairman.
And that's very interesting, because when you understand the Denny Hastert rule of the majority of that conference, so you really do hold a lot of power. Now, you brought up something interesting about, you know, the Senate, what they're doing, what they're passing. Immigration bill is going to be coming up. You know, we had a quote-unquote gang of 4 on the Republican side on the House, but Raul Labrador, one of the members of the RSC, just dropped out, so that leaves Mario Diaz-Balart, Sam Johnson, and Judge Carter. How are you tackling this as far as the legislative stance from a conservative perspective? Because a lot of folks are out there saying, you know, what is emanating out of the Senate is a conservative solution. Do you agree with that?
I'm not supportive of the Senate bill as it's been moving through. You know, and frankly, we had a very good, heated discussion at our last RSC meeting, because a lot of our members in RSC are right in the middle of this debate. You know, you mentioned Raul Labrador, probably one of the most respected Republicans on immigration in the House, but also Bob Goodlatte, the chairman of the committee, Trey Gowdy, and others, and Lamar Smith used to chair the committee. He's involved. You know, one of the things that we'd like to see in the House, and this is definitely where my position is, we need to start with securing our border. I think one of the biggest flaws of the last immigration law that was passed through Congress was back in '86. And you know, there was a lot of promise of securing the borders, but in the meantime, they gave amnesty immediately. And of course, we see now, you know, you might have 11 or more million people that are in this country illegally because we still haven't secured our border. And this is a Republican and Democrat problem over decades.
It's bipartisan.
And so, you know, what we'd like to see is, you know, if there's going to be immigration legislation that moves through the House, it has to start with securing America's border. It's a national security problem. And then you work through some of the other challenges in our broken immigration system. Look, my great-grandparents came here from Italy. I strongly support a legal immigration system. It's what made our country great, but it's broken. You've got people that want to come here and work, whether it's in agricultural fields or whether it's in the high-tech fields. We need to fix that system that's broken, but then you also have to deal with the people that are here illegally, and how do you handle that? But also I think, and this is one thing that's not talked about a lot, Alan, there are over 4 million people that are playing by the rules right now that want to come to America. They want to achieve the American dream, and they're doing it the legal way. They're waiting in line, in many cases, in a foreign country. And we can't forget about them. We can't let somebody jump in front of them that broke the rules when they're playing by the rules.
You're absolutely right. And one of the concerns I have when you say that, the Department of Homeland Security has the trigger to, put the check in the box, it really is not about border security. It's just saying, well, we kind of have a concept or a plan out there. Now, another thing that, we see a little bit of a schism, and really it's not about party, is this whole surveillance thing coming out of the NSA. How is it going to fall? I mean, when you talk about you as the, conservative standard bearer here in the House, what's your perspective on this? Because I really believe we cannot sacrifice our liberties for safety, and Benjamin Franklin talked about that.
Absolutely. And there's always been a balancing act throughout the history of our country of privacy versus the need for national security. And I think it absolutely can be achieved. But look, I don't serve on any of the intelligence committees, but I have some very serious concerns about some of the things I've seen in the print media about this NSA data collection program that they had. I mean, if there is a program where the federal government can literally go and get the phone records of every single American, not with any suspicion. I mean, if they suspect somebody's involved in illegal activity, they can go to a court right now and get that information. But if they just keep a database of all phone calls that everybody made, and anytime they suspect somebody of doing something, they can just go and tap into that database without even going to a judge. I have some serious concerns about that, and I think that that would be something that to me would cross the line. Yeah. So there's a lot more that's going to come out on this whole NSA.
Did you get your questions answered when they had the classified briefing? I mean, we can't talk about what was said.
I can't get into the details of that, but I still have some very serious questions. I do think one of the great things about the Republicans being in charge of the House right now is that we really can do and are doing aggressive oversight on every front of this Obama administration, from IRS to what we're seeing in Benghazi, to the AP scandal. So on all of these fronts, we really have the ability to go and do full-scale oversight and investigation, and we ought to do that in this NSA case as well.
When we talk about conservative principles and values, limited government, fiscal responsibility, individual liberty and sovereignty, strong national defense, a free market. We just recently saw this report that came out from the National College Republicans, and they were saying there's a little bit of a disconnect between Republicans and the young people. How do we get that strong conservative message out to the young people and make sure that we're showing them really the detriment to their future if we continue down the path of this gross overspending and onerous government?
I think this has been one of the real shortcomings of the Republican Party over the last few years, and really the last two presidential election cycles. And that is, I don't think we've related the things that we believe in, the conservative principles that we share. When you poll these positions, generally people support conservative free market, opportunity type society. But then when you look at how it's worked out in elections, we've been losing a lot of those young voters. And I think a lot of it is because we really don't relate it well enough to individuals. The fact that under the Obama economy, the highest group of unemployed people right now are young people. Somebody that graduates from school right now with maybe tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt, they can't even find a job in their field right now, more than half of them. And that's because of the president's policies, yet a majority of them voted for the president. And I don't think a lot of it is because we haven't stated the case well enough why conservative principles really matter to young people that believe in the American dream. With the things that made this country great are at risk right now. And if we're just talking about balance sheets and we're just talking about massive debt and radical regulations, some people get that, but there are a lot of people that say, well, wait, how does this relate to me? And how's this going to, how are your policies going to help me get a job? How are your policies going to help me raise a family and, and live the life I want?
And you just brought up a great point when you talk about family. And I will tell you that in the black community, we have seen the family be absolutely decimated. When you look at the Great Society programs, coming out of the Johnson administration, we have a black community now that where only 29% of children have mother and father in the home. Now, some people will say you got to back away from talking about the traditional American family. I disagree with that. How can we do better about talking about how strong families are great for America, to include good for our economy as well?
Absolutely. And this is where I think, need to go after this head on. And start with the war on poverty. I mean, when the Democratic Party declared war on poverty and said they want to spend trillions of dollars, by the
We're
way,
up to
which they've done.
17 trillion.
Trillions of dollars that have been spent on the war on poverty. There are more people in poverty today in America than when the war on poverty started back in the 1960s. These programs have failed because it's all based on big government taking care of you and telling you, don't go out and achieve your own dreams, government will take care of it. Well, most people realize now that that's not going to work, and it hasn't worked for decades. Yet we don't take that head on enough and say, wait a minute, if you're really saying that these programs are going to help people, go look at the history, the track record. It hasn't worked. There's a better way. And when people have been given more individual freedom, when we get the government out of the way and say, look, let's let people go out and have the freedoms that they cherish and go and pursue the American dream, they're much more successful.
Let's talk about, as we wrap this up, what are your top 2 priorities as the chairman of the Republican Study Committee?
Well, number one right now is getting control of runaway spending in Washington. We've been dealing for months now on what's coming up with the debt ceiling, but it's really been a long series of programs from the appropriations bills, the funding of government. We want to get control of runaway spending, and that's something that we're working very hard to do so that my children, I've got a 6 and a 4-year-old, they ought to have the same right to the American dream that I have. The other side is to get the economy back on track. And on that front, we've pushed in the RSC a number of proposals ranging from energy. We want an all-American energy strategy where we can create millions of jobs in America and be energy secure. We don't have to get oil from Middle Eastern countries who don't like us. Those are things we can do. The president ought to green light the Keystone Pipeline today. 20,000 jobs right there. You want to talk about something that'll help young people get jobs. Energy is a great area, the technology arena where the government's now trying to get involved in regulating the internet, limiting what internet companies can do in managing their own networks. What I've said is, look, my degree's in computer science. One of the reasons the technology industry's grown so much is because it moves so fast that government hadn't figured out how to regulate it. Yeah. And so you got to get all of these federal agencies out of the way of trying to kill jobs and say, look, let's create good jobs, get a good economy going again. So when young people graduate from college, they ought to have good jobs waiting for them so that they can graduate and put those skills to use right away. And they can't do it right now under the Obama administration's radical policies.
In closing, what would you like to say to your constituents back in Louisiana first, and also to our viewers? Camera's yours.
Well, Alan, one thing that you hear all the time, when I go back home every weekend, I talk to small businesses. They're very concerned about the policies coming out of Washington. That's one of the biggest impediments on job creation. When I talk to people that are just looking to find good work right now, the first thing they complain about is all the policies that are coming out of Washington. Washington's job should be to help create an environment where people can go pursue their dreams. And right now, Washington is the one getting in the way. And so what we ought to be doing, and what I fight for every day, is to say, look, let's let people go out and be the best they can be and achieve their dreams without government coming in and saying, look, if you're doing something that we don't like, we're going to stop you. We see with the IRS, if they don't like your political views right now, they're targeting you. That's not what America's all about. So I think people are very frustrated about the policies coming out of Washington, and they sent me up there to fight, and we're actively fighting to try to get our country back on track, to get our economy back on track, so that people can go out and get good jobs and raise their families and live the American dream.
Ladies and gentlemen, Representative Steve Scalise, who is the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, which means he is the top conservative in the House. Representative, thanks so much.
Great to see you.
You're a great leader, and thank you for taking the time.
Thanks
For
for
Next
your leadership.
Generation TV, I'm Alan West, and thanks for watching.